This morning, on a live phone call with NBC News anchor Kristen Welker, Donald Trump said 7 words that instantly sent oil traders, global economists, and foreign ministries into emergency mode. The terms aren't good enough yet. Iran, according to Trump himself, is ready to talk, ready to negotiate, ready to end a war that has already killed more than 1,400 people, closed the world's most critical oil lane, and sent crude prices to their highest point since Russia invaded Ukraine in 2002. And Trump said no, not yet. The terms aren't good enough. While he said that, while those words were still echoing across trading floors from New York to Tokyo, US and Israeli warplanes were already in the air bombing Isfahan. Iran's missiles were already in the air hitting Gulf countries. 6 American airmen's names were being released to grieving families. And oil was still sitting above $110 a barrel. So here's the question that nobody on television is asking clearly enough right now. If Iran wants a deal and Trump won't take it, if Israel just told CNN it plans at least 3 more weeks of strikes with thousands of targets remaining, what does that mean for the price of oil? What does it mean for the price of gas at your pump next week? What does it mean for your grocery bill, your retirement account, and whether this war tips the global economy into a recession before summer? I have been going through the documents, the Reuters investigation, the Goldman Sachs research reports, the Bloomberg analysis, and the live statements from both sides since this story broke this morning. Here is what the headlines are missing. And here is why this single rejected deal matters far more than the military story you're being shown on every other channel. Before we go deeper into what Trump actually said, what Iran's real position is behind the scenes, what Israel just revealed about 3 more weeks of bombing, and what Goldman Sachs is now saying about recession risk, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to this channel right now. This story is moving faster than almost anything I have ever covered. Every hour brings a new development, and the next 72 hours will determine whether oil prices stabilize or make their next major move upward. Subscribe notifications on. You'll want to be here when the next piece breaks. Quick context. The war began on February 28, 2026, day 1 of what the US military called Operation Epic Fury. American and Israeli forces launched coordinated strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, missile infrastructure, and military leadership. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed. His wife, his mother, and his son died in the same strike. His replacement, Mojtaba Khamenei, was installed by the Revolutionary Guards and has been largely out of public sight since. In the 16 days since then, Iran declared the Strait of Hormuz closed. The US destroyed 28 Iranian mine-laying vessels. 6 US airmen were killed in a KC-135 refueling plane crash in western Iraq, bringing total American deaths to 13. At least 1,444 Iranians have been confirmed dead, according to Al Jazeera's live tracker, including hundreds of civilians. Isfahan has been hit repeatedly. Iran has threatened UAE ports and ordered civilian evacuations near 3 of the Gulf's busiest commercial docks. And oil, which was trading at $87 per barrel on February 27th, has already touched $120 and is currently sitting around $110, a 26% increase in 16 days. That is the setup. Now, the documents and the statements, because what happened this morning is where this story takes a turn that most coverage is underplaying. The evidence, the central statement was made today, Sunday, March 15th, in a live phone call between President Donald Trump and NBC News anchor Kristen Welker on Meet the Press. I am quoting directly from the verified transcript released by NBC News. Trump said, "Iran wants to make a deal, and I don't want to make it because the terms aren't good enough yet." Then he added, "US forces have totally obliterated Iran militarily." And then he said something that has barely been covered. He said he was considering options to mitigate oil prices, which tells you that the administration itself understands the economic damage this war is causing is real, visible, and politically dangerous. But here is what got me. This was not the only statement made about a deal today. Read it alongside what Reuters reported Saturday, citing a senior White House official. Trump has rebuffed efforts to start ceasefire talks and is focused on pressing ahead with the war. So it is not just that the terms are not right. According to Reuters' own sourcing, Trump has been actively rejecting the attempts to even begin talks. Those are not the same thing. Terms aren't good enough implies negotiation is happening. Rebuffed efforts to start talks means the door is not even open. Then read what Bloomberg reported Sunday. Trump rejects deal with Iran on current terms as war rages on. Bloomberg confirmed no counteroffer has been made, no channel has been formally opened, and no timeline for talks exists. I went through these three sourced statements 3 times. The pattern is clear. There is a gap between what Trump is saying publicly on NBC, Iran wants a deal, and what is actually happening according to Reuters and Bloomberg sources. The president is projecting strength and a position of leverage. His own White House is simultaneously confirming that he has refused to even start the conversation. That gap matters enormously for every projection about when this war ends and what oil prices do next, what nobody is covering. Now here's the detail buried on page 2 of every article that should be on the front page of every financial publication in the world. Iran's position is not what Trump described. While Trump told NBC that Iran wants to make a deal, Iran's own foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, said something completely different. Bloomberg reported Sunday, citing 2 senior Iranian sources, Iran has not asked for a ceasefire and sees no reason for talks with the U.S. The BBC confirmed this directly, citing Iranian statements made today. Iran has not asked for ceasefire and sees no reason for talks with the U.S. Iranian minister says. The Jerusalem Post reported Iran's actual ceasefire condition, published Friday. Iran will only agree to a ceasefire if the U.S. and Israel guarantee they will never strike Iran again in the future. That is not a negotiating position. That is a condition no American president could accept publicly without ending his political career. It is structurally designed to be rejected. Read those 3 things together. Trump says Iran wants a deal. Iran says it never asked for one. And Iran's stated condition for any ceasefire is a permanent guarantee of immunity from future American and Israeli military action. There is no deal. There's no deal being discussed. There is no channel through which a deal is being negotiated. What exists is a public narrative from the White House that a deal is possible, and a documentary reality from Reuters, Bloomberg, the BBC, and Iran's own foreign minister that says the opposite. That is not a political observation. That is a factual mismatch between public messaging and sourced reporting. And it is the single most important piece of information for understanding where oil prices go from here. Because oil markets, more than anything else, are pricing in expectation. When the president says a deal is coming, markets relax briefly, prices dip. The BBC documented this exactly. When Trump said the war was very complete, oil and gas prices fell sharply within hours. Then they recovered when the war continued. If the market understands that there is no real deal pathway right now, that recovery of prices is the baseline, not the exception, the fallout, what already happened today in parallel with Trump rejecting the deal terms, because the juxtaposition is important. While Trump was on the phone with NBC saying he would not accept a deal, the Israeli military told CNN that it is planning at least 3 more weeks of its campaign in Iran with, quote, thousands of targets remaining. IDF spokesperson Brigadier General Effie Dufresne confirmed this on CNN Sunday. 3 more weeks, thousands of targets. That is not a military winding down. That is a military in the early stages of a campaign it considers still far from complete. U.S. and Israeli aircraft struck Isfahan. Al Jazeera confirmed a barrage of strikes hit multiple sites in the city. A factory strike alone killed at least 15 workers, according to Iranian media. The death toll from U.S.-Israeli strikes, according to the Iranian government's own spokesperson, now stands at confirmed damage to more than 42,000 civilian sites across Iran. Iran threatened the UAE. For the first time since the war began, Iran issued direct warnings to the United Arab Emirates, one of the world's most important commercial shipping hubs, urging residents to evacuate 3 major ports. According to AP, the Associated Press, and France 24, some oil loading operations in Fujairah have already been suspended as a result. Fujairah is the busiest port in the Middle East. It is where thousands of tankers refuel and transfer cargo. Its partial suspension is not a footnote. It is another piece of the global supply chain cracking under the pressure of this war. Pope Leo XIV delivered his strongest public appeal yet this morning, directly addressing those responsible for the war and demanding an immediate ceasefire. He called the violence atrocious and warned that, quote, violence can never lead to the justice, stability, and peace that the people are seeking. When the Pope speaks like this, not in general terms, but directly at the leaders who launched a war, it tells you the international pressure for de-escalation is reaching levels that have not been seen since the early days of the Ukraine invasion. Goldman Sachs cut its US economic outlook this week. Goldman now projects a 25% probability of recession in the next 12 months, a dramatic shift directly attributed to the Iran war. This was reported by MarketWatch and Morningstar on Thursday. And 6 names were released. 6 American airmen killed when their KC-135 refueling aircraft crashed in western Iraq on March 12th. The Pentagon confirmed their identities today. Total US military deaths since Operation Epic Fury began. 13 confirmed service members. Real people, real families, real funerals being planned while this war continues, because the terms are not good enough yet. All of that happened in the same window of time Trump was on the phone telling NBC a deal might be close. The other side, and where they have a point, I want to be fair here because there are real counter-arguments and they deserve honest treatment. The Trump administration's core argument is this: if you negotiate from a position of incomplete military success, you lock in a deal that Iran can later circumvent. The goal, according to National Thailand's reporting on Trump's position, is that any deal must include a permanent resolution of the nuclear issue. Not just a ceasefire, but a commitment that Iran dismantles its nuclear program. If you stop the bombing before that is achieved, Iran rebuilds and you are back here in 5 years. That is a strategically coherent position. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, said directly on Fox News Sunday that military options for Iran's nuclear program are, quote, focused and targeted, signaling the administration believes it can still achieve a decisive outcome through continued military action. If that assessment is correct, waiting for better terms has a logic. Senator Tom Cotton, a consistent administration ally on Iran, argued that every additional day of strikes degrades Iran's military capacity further, which improves the eventual deal terms. Wait long enough, strike hard enough, and you negotiate from total dominance rather than partial advantage. That is not an irrational position. And there is a third point worth acknowledging: Iran's stated ceasefire condition, a permanent guarantee of no future strikes, is genuinely impossible for any US president to sign. It would mean permanently constraining American military options in the region. Trump rejecting that specific condition is not obstruction of peace. It is a rejection of a condition designed to be rejected. But here is where the counter-argument breaks down. And it is worth saying clearly, Reuters reported Saturday, citing sources directly inside the White House, that Trump has rebuffed efforts to even start talks, not rejected specific terms. Refused to open a channel. Those are different things. Refusing to negotiate at all means there is no information about what Iran might actually accept if the stated impossible condition were removed. It means no back channel is running. It means the war continues with no diplomatic process parallel to the military one. And Israel saying 3 more weeks with thousands of targets is not a step toward resolution. It is a commitment to 3 more weeks of uncertainty for oil markets, global shipping, and the Strait of Hormuz. The economic cost of 3 more weeks is not abstract. I am going to show you exactly what it is. Backstory, how we got here. This did not come out of nowhere. The gap between public deal talk and private rejection has a history. March 4th, Bloomberg reported that Iran's Ministry of Intelligence had quietly reached out to the US to explore the possibility of ending the war. Iran immediately denied it. US officials offered no comment. 2 governments, both of whom claim the other wants to negotiate, both publicly refusing to confirm any contact. That story vanished in 48 hours. March 8th, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi appeared on NBC's Meet the Press directly on the same program where Trump spoke today and said Iran would fight until, quote, the war ends permanently. He did not say Iran wanted a deal. He said Iran would fight. March 11th, Bloomberg reported from intermediaries in the region that Iran's actual ceasefire demand was a guarantee of no future U.S. or Israeli strikes. This condition was communicated through regional intermediaries, not directly. No American official publicly responded to it. March 12th, Trump's administration was still publicly describing the war as nearly complete. Very complete, pretty much, Trump said. Oil fell $4 in 15 on that statement, then kept going. March 13th, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and Reuters all published revised economic forecasts, acknowledging the war's impact was no longer a short-term spike, but a structural disruption requiring recalibrated projections. March 14th, Reuters published, Trump has rebuffed ceasefire efforts. March 15th, today, Trump goes on NBC and says the terms are not good enough yet, as if a negotiation is in progress. But according to Reuters sourcing from the day before, no negotiation is in progress. Pattern: public confidence, private rejection, economic damage accumulating, markets briefly calmed by deal talk. Then reality resumes. Every time, since day one. What happened this morning, scene by scene, 9 a.m. Eastern, Kristen Welker's phone rings. It is the President of the United States calling in to meet the press. The call lasts nearly 30 minutes. In the first section of the interview, Trump says Iran has been militarily defeated. He uses the phrase total obliteration. He claims U.S. forces have destroyed a large amount of Iran's leadership. Then Welker asks directly about a deal. And this is where the sentence lands. Iran wants to make a deal, and I don't want to make it because the terms aren't good enough yet. Markets move immediately. Brent crude ticks down slightly on the brief implication that a deal is possible. Within 20 minutes, analysts begin reading the rest of the statement. The phrase "not good enough yet" contains a qualifier. It implies current terms are insufficient, not that a deal is the direction. It implies Trump controls the timeline. It gives no indication of what terms would be sufficient. 10:44 a.m. Eastern. CNN publishes its live update confirming President Donald Trump says the U.S. is not yet prepared to make a deal with Tehran. The CNN framing is slightly harder than Trump's own words, but accurate. Within the same hour, the IDF spokesperson tells CNN, 3 more weeks, thousands of targets. By noon, Brent crude has recovered fully from its brief dip. The momentary deal optimism has been priced back out. Oil sits above $110. By 2 p.m. Eastern, multiple outlets confirm Iran has renewed threats against UAE ports. Some operations at Fujairah have been suspended. By 3 p.m. Eastern, Pope Leo XIV is at the Vatican window in Rome, delivering his noon Angelus, the most public moment of his weekly calendar, and directly addressing those responsible for the war. He demands a ceasefire. He uses the word atrocious. The Vatican does not use that word casually. Now, what everyone missed while all of that was happening, buried in the Reuters report from Saturday, one sentence that did not make any headline I have found. A senior White House official confirmed Trump has rebuffed those efforts to start talks and is focused on pressing ahead with the war to achieve better terms. Not is considering options, not is reviewing proposals, has rebuffed, past tense, decisive, active decision. The war continues not because no deal exists. The war continues because the U.S. president made a deliberate choice this week to reject the initiation of a diplomatic process. That is a different story than terms aren't good enough yet. One story suggests a deal is close. The other story says a deal is being actively prevented. The documents support the second story. Expert analysis. What the people who do this for a living are saying. Scott Modell, managing director of Rapidan Energy Group, has testified before the Senate Energy Committee. He said this week, this is by measurable oil market data, the largest energy supply disruption since the Arab oil embargo of 1973. The 1973 embargo lasted 5 months and produced a recession. We are on day 16. Goldman Sachs research in their published analysis this week stated directly, oil prices can rise significantly and well above fair value estimates when geopolitical uncertainty is high. Their revised Q4 2026 Brent forecast is $71 per barrel, which assumes resolution. If resolution doesn't come, that forecast becomes irrelevant immediately. Goldman Sachs also cut their US economic growth outlook and assigned a 25% recession probability in the next 12 months. That was Thursday. That was before today's deal rejection. Janet Yellen, former Treasury Secretary, speaking at the Peterson Institute this week, every model we run for sustained Hormuz closure beyond 3 weeks shows recession probability for the US economy exceeding 65%. Israel just said 3 more weeks of strikes today. The Hormuz closure is connected directly to those strikes. You do the math. Hakam Kaya, senior portfolio manager at Neuberger Berman, wrote in a published analysis, a full or near full closure lasting a month or more would require demand destruction at levels that could push crude well into triple digits, and European natural gas prices toward or above the crisis levels seen in 2022. Here is what is interesting. Even analysts who strongly support the military operation are acknowledging the economic math. Former US Ambassador Dennis Ross, speaking to Bloomberg this week, there's a point at which military pressure has extracted maximum diplomatic leverage, and additional strikes produce diminishing returns, but continuing economic damage. You have to know when to shift from military to diplomatic instruments. He was not asked to comment on whether that point has been reached, but the fact that he framed it that way is itself an answer. When former hawkish diplomats start framing the question as when to shift, pay attention, that is not defeatism. That is 40 years of professional experience recognizing a pattern, why you should care, real talk, your money. Let me be direct about what today's news means in practical terms for every single person watching this. Gas prices. Before Operation Epic Fury began on February 28th, Brent crude was at $87 per barrel. Right now, it is above $110. That is a 26% increase in 16 days. That increase has not fully reached gas stations yet. The lag between crude price increases and pump price increases is typically 2 to 3 weeks. Analysts at Goldman Sachs project national average US gas prices reaching $4.50 to $5 per gallon if crude stays elevated for the next 30 days. Today, Trump just told you the war continues because the terms aren't good enough. Israel just told CNN 3 more weeks. That is your 30 days right there. Groceries. This is the part that most financial coverage is not connecting loudly enough. Qatar is one of the world's largest producers of nitrogen-based fertilizers. Qatar Energy has already curtailed production due to the conflict. Nearly 30% of global ammonia production is affected by this war. According to the fertilizer spring planting season in the Northern Hemisphere, the planting season that determines what you pay for corn, wheat, and soy in late 2026 begins in the next 4 to 6 weeks. If fertilizer doesn't reach American farmers in the next 3 weeks, they plant less. Less planting means smaller harvests. Smaller harvests mean higher food prices through the end of 2026 and into 2007. The Guardian reported this week that the global food price impact of a sustained Hormuz closure is estimated at 12 to 18% increase within 6 months. That means the price of a $100 weekly grocery run potentially becoming a $112 to $118 weekly grocery run. Every week, for months, your retirement account, the S&P 500, is down approximately 7% since February 28th. Energy stocks are the only sector performing well, up 14%. Airlines are down 22%. Manufacturing is down between 8 and 15%. If you have a diversified retirement portfolio, and 60 million Americans do, you have already felt this war in your savings. Goldman Sachs assigns 25% recession odds. Ed Yardeni, one of Wall Street's most respected market analysts, puts 35% probability on a market meltdown. JP Morgan warned of a 10% potential stock market decline. Those numbers were before today's deal rejection, before the UAE port threats. The IEA's emergency release, 32 countries unanimously released 400 million barrels of emergency oil reserves, the largest such release in the history of the International Energy Agency. That sounds enormous. It is 4 days of global consumption. It is a bridge. It is not a solution. If the strait stays closed for 3 more weeks, the bridge runs out and the underlying problem is still there. How both sides responded and where they made it worse. Trump on NBC. Iran wants to make a deal, and I don't want to make it because the terms aren't good enough yet. Then, on Truth Social, he posted that US forces have achieved total obliteration of Iran militarily and called on other countries to send warships to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. Think about those two statements together. On one hand, we have totally obliterated Iran militarily. On the other hand, we need other countries to help secure a strait that Iran is still effectively keeping closed. If the obliteration is total, why does the strait need securing? If the strait still needs securing, is the obliteration total? The internal contradiction in those two statements is the gap between military messaging and operational reality that markets are watching every day. Iran, through its foreign minister and official state channels, denied reaching out for any deal. Iran's member of the Expediency Council stated publicly that the Strait of Hormuz will not be reopened to US ships and called for American withdrawal from the Gulf, not a negotiating position. A declaration, Israel said, 3 more weeks, thousands of targets. IDF spokesperson Dufresne confirmed this on CNN this morning. 3 more weeks of bombing a country while simultaneously claiming that country wants a deal creates a contradiction that the market is now pricing in daily. Pope Leo XIV demanded a ceasefire directly to the leaders responsible, calling the violence atrocious and warning that bombs cannot create peace. The Vatican is a diplomatic institution with centuries of conflict mediation experience. When the Vatican escalates its public language to atrocious and addresses specific leaders directly, not governments abstractly, but those responsible, it signals that the international pressure for de-escalation has reached a threshold the administration can no longer quietly ignore. The response from the White House to the Pope, silence. No statement. The response to Iran's denial of wanting a deal, silence. The response to Israel's 3 more weeks announcement, no pushback, no coordination messaging, just simultaneous claims of military victory and a call for other countries to help with a strait that is still not open. What is still unclear one? What are Trump's actual terms? He said the terms aren't good enough yet. He declined to specify what terms would be sufficient. No reporter on the NBC call pressed him on this. No subsequent briefing clarified it. Without knowing what acceptable terms look like, there is no framework for assessing how far away a deal actually is. 2, why is Iran denying it wants a deal if Trump says it does? One of 2 things is happening. Either back-channel signals that Trump is interpreting as deal-seeking are being publicly denied by Iran for domestic political reasons. Showing weakness inside Iran during a war is politically fatal for any leadership. Or Trump is projecting deal readiness onto a situation where none exists, to manage public perception of oil prices and economic anxiety. Both are possible. Neither has been confirmed. 3. What does Israel's 3 more weeks actually include? Thousands of targets could mean continued air campaigns against military infrastructure. It could also mean an escalation into territory the US has not publicly authorized. Israel and the US have not always coordinated public timelines. 4. What happens to oil if Hormuz stays closed? The models from Goldman Sachs, Neuberger Berman, and Janet Yellen's economic team all give answers that range from uncomfortable to recession triggering. But the market hasn't fully priced in 3 more confirmed weeks yet. When it does, and it will as soon as this week's trading begins Monday, that repricing will be visible. Coming up, dates and events to watch. Monday, March 16th. Markets open in Asia and Europe for the first time since Trump's NBC statement and Israel's 3 weeks announcement. Watch Monday morning. Oil pricing as the first real-time financial verdict on today's news this week. The IEA emergency oil reserve release begins hitting markets. Watch whether it succeeds in stabilizing prices or whether the continued Hormuz closure and today's no-deal announcement overwhelm the reserve injection. Wednesday, March 18th. the US Federal Reserve's next scheduled communication window, with Goldman Sachs assigning 25% recession odds and inflation pressure from energy prices already building. Watch for any adjustment in Fed language about rate trajectory. Any hint of economic concern from the Fed will move markets harder than anything Trump says on Truth Social. The next 72 hours, Iran's foreign ministry has said it will issue a formal response to Trump's NBC statements. Whatever language they choose will tell analysts whether the position of no ceasefire while attacks continue is hardening or softening. Watch for that statement. 3 weeks from today, approximately April 5th. If Israel's announced timeline holds, this is when the Israeli military campaign is supposed to reach its stated objectives. Every economic model of this war treats that date as an inflection point. Either the campaign concludes and diplomacy begins, or it extends further and every financial projection has to be recalibrated again. Subscribe now. Turn on notifications. Monday morning opens with the first market verdict on everything that happened today. When oil moves, and it will, I will have the analysis up before most outlets have loaded their templates. Where we are right now, the complete picture. Day 16 of the Iran war. Here is the full state of play as of Sunday, March 15th, 2026. The deal: Trump says Iran wants one. Iran denies it. Trump is not ready. Reuters confirms Trump rejected even starting talks. Iran's stated condition, no future strikes guaranteed, is structurally unacceptable to any US president. There is no active negotiation. There is no diplomatic channel confirmed to be running. The military campaign, Israel says 3 more weeks, thousands of targets. US struck Karg Island, Iran's oil hub, on March 14th. 90 plus military targets hit. Isfahan bombed again today. 15 factory workers confirmed dead. US and Israeli strikes have hit 42,000 plus sites across Iran per Iranian government figures. Total confirmed dead: 444 plus Iranians, 13 US service members, 15 plus Israelis, 19 in Gulf countries. The economy: oil started at $87 on February 28th. Hit $120, currently above $110. Goldman Sachs, 25% recession odds. IEA released 400 million barrels. 4 days of global supply. Gas prices rising, grocery prices following, retirement accounts down 7% across the S&P. The Strait: Iran said today it will not reopen to US ships. India is the only country Iran is allowing through. 0 commercial tankers have made the full transit in 16 days. Mines are still in the water. The escalation today: Iran threatened UAE ports. Fujairah operations partially suspended. Pope Leo XIV demanded ceasefire, calling the violence atrocious. 2,500 US Marines being deployed to the region. Trump rejected deal. Israel confirmed 3 more weeks. Trump's public position: Iran militarily obliterated. Deal possible, but terms not good enough. Other countries asked to send warships to help secure Hormuz. The documented reality: Reuters says ceasefire talks have been rebuffed. Iran says no talks requested and no talks possible while bombing continues. Israel is planning minimum 3 more weeks of strikes. Between those two narratives, the presidential messaging and the sourced reporting, lies a gap. And in that gap, oil prices sit above $110. Fertilizer shipments are stalled, pension funds are down, and 13 American families are burying service members whose deaths are now part of a war that the president says is nearly over. But every document, every military announcement, and every market signal says is not. I will be watching Monday morning's oil market open closely. That is the next real signal. When markets price in everything that happened today, the rejected deal, the 3 more weeks announcement, the UAE threats, the continued Hormuz closure, the number that comes out the other side will tell us more than any press conference. Stay with this channel. Subscribe. Notifications on when the markets open, when the Fed speaks, when Iran issues its formal response, when the next document drops. I will break it down the same way. Evidence first, numbers first. What it means for you. First, this war is not nearly over, and the price you pay for that at the gas pump, in the grocery store, in your retirement account is not nearly done rising.